So, although there are many ways that alcoholics can become sober, what are some general difficulties they may face in the process?
There are a lot of difficulties actually, because coming from alcoholism to a sober identity means losing their identity that they've known for a number of years, and even just finding who they are again is a little bit difficult for people. The other difficulty around that is probably a number of the friends that they've had and the social circle that they've been used to being involved with has been people who know them as somebody who drinks. So their identity to in their social circle is that of somebody who is not sober. So finding the self is quite a difficult process for them, because in a sense they don't even remember who that sober self is, and they're not acquainted with it themselves, and it's very difficult to put that face forward to the people that they have been in contact with. In a sense, sometimes they have to give up those friends and try to find another circle of friends because of that very difficulty.
And do you think that the social situations that they might be used to being in would become a temptation almost, do you think?
Well, a temptation in one sense, especially if their friends are still drinking or using drugs, but I suppose you're interested more in alcoholism, but often they go hand in hand. So yes, that is that difficulty because they're faced with other people drinking, but it's also the triggers that occur for them. It's a little bit like the difficulty of giving up smoking as well. I mean, we get used to smoking while we have a cup of coffee or smoking while we have a drink. So we have those things that we couple together that go hand in hand, and so it makes it difficult to give up, unless you give up that whole way in which you go about doing things. So if somebody is used to going down to the pub, for example, to socialise, that's not going to be a way that they can socialise anymore. They have to think of it.
So could you explain triggers a bit more for me?
Yes, certainly. There's things that couple together that go hand in hand and allow that make a person feel like a drink because they're in that situation that triggers it. So, for example, if somebody is used to smoking while they're drinking, or used to having a drink whilst they're smoking, if they light a cigarette, and obviously they're not going to give up everything at the same time, the natural reaction would be wanting to have a cigarette. And then, of course, we tend to couple it with our feelings as well. So people who feel stressed, who have the idea that if they drink, it's going to take away the stress. It doesn't necessarily, but if they drink enough, it allows them to forget about the stress that they have. So then they begin to use it as a coping mechanism. So the stress might trigger the drinking, and then they use that, and each night it tends to get a little bit more, and before they know it, they're actually needing the drink and they can't deal with the stress unless they do that. So what actually happens is a person doesn't deal with the things that are problematic for them, and if they stop drinking, then the stress becomes overwhelming, and they don't have the mechanisms in which to deal with that.
So do you think seeing a psychologist or a counsellor would help deal with that? Would they be able to suggest different coping mechanisms that can replace the alcohol?
Yeah, most certainly that would happen. The other thing that's really important too is what stage of change the person is at. If they haven't even thought about wanting to stop drinking, it's going to be very difficult for them. The best time to be able to seek help is if the person recognises they have a problem and makes a decision that they would like to do something about it. And at that point, when they're ready for change, is when they can actually make the most of help that a psychologist or a counsellor can give them. And one of the things that they would do would be to get them to deal with the issues that are problematic for them other than the drinking that have led them to the drinking. For example, the stress.
Mm-hmm.